By the end of the 6th month, the Droo Empire had lost 40% of its military forces. Entire sectors had gone dark. Patrol routes that had been secure for centuries were now empty corridors of space. Fleet Admiral Vextalon sat in his command center, staring at a tactical display that showed red markers where his ships and bases used to be. "Status report," he demanded from his staff. Captain Kexmari cleared his throat nervously. "We have lost contact with the 7th Fleet, the 12th Patrol Group, and Base Omega in the last 24 hours. That brings our total losses to 147 ships and 62 installations." Vextalon slammed his fist on the control panel. "How is this possible? We are the most powerful force in the galaxy. We have sensors that can detect a grain of sand from 1,000,000 kilometers away. We have weapons that can destroy planets. How can we be losing to an enemy we cannot even see?" Dr. Quintal had been working around the clock to find answers. She had analyzed every piece of data from the disappearances and reached a conclusion that terrified her. "Sir, I believe we are dealing with a completely new form of warfare. Someone has developed technology that operates outside our understanding of physics." "Explain," Vextalon ordered. "The missing ships and bases are not being destroyed," Quintal said. "They are being moved, transported to other locations through some method we cannot detect or counter." "That is impossible," Vextalon replied. "Nothing can move objects that large without massive energy expenditure. Our sensors would detect it, unless the attackers are using principles we have never encountered," Quintal suggested. "Our technology assumes certain constants about how space and energy work. But what if those assumptions are wrong?" While the Droo leadership struggled to understand what was happening to them, Admiral Morrison was preparing the final phase of Operation Ghostwalk. The human fleet had grown to 30 ghost ships, each one capable of making entire Droo installations vanish without a trace. "We have achieved our tactical objectives," Morrison announced to his senior staff. "The Empire's military capacity has been reduced to manageable levels, but they still control their government and their core territories." Dr. Grant nodded from her position at the main display. "Phase 4 will require a different approach. We cannot simply make their homeworld disappear. Too many innocent civilians." "Are you proposing?" asked General Hayes. Morrison smiled grimly. "We remove their leadership and military command structure, all of it, in one coordinated strike." The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Instead of targeting individual ships or bases, they would simultaneously attack every major Droo command center, government facility, military headquarters across dozens of star systems. Captain Rodriguez led the largest strike force humanity had ever assembled. 15 ghost ships spread across Droo space, each one positioned near a critical target. The coordination required split-second timing across distances of hundreds of light years. "All teams report ready," Rodriguez announced over the encrypted communication channel. "Beginning final approach to primary targets." On the Droo homeworld of Crystallo's Emperor Vaxilon was holding an emergency session with his military commanders. The Crystal Palace that housed the government had stood for over 3,000 years. It was protected by orbital defense, platforms and energy shields that could stop any known weapon. "Find whoever is doing this and destroy them," the Emperor commanded. "Use every resource at our disposal. Offer rewards. Threaten our enemies. Do whatever it takes, Fleet Admiral." Vextalon stood before his ruler, trying to explain the impossible. "Your Majesty, we have searched every system in our territory. We have interrogated prisoners from every species we know. No one has technology capable of these attacks." "Then you are not looking hard enough," the Emperor replied angrily. At that moment, Captain Rodriguez's ship materialized in space, just outside the planet's atmosphere. The ghost ship was invisible to Droo's sensors, but its crew could see everything happening on the surface below. "Target confirmed," Rodriguez reported. "Imperial Palace, Government District, Military Headquarters, all in visual range." "Execute Phase 4, came Morrison's voice from across the galaxy. Rodriguez activated the spacefold technology, but this time, instead of transporting his targets to a distant star, he sent them somewhere much closer to home. The Emperor, his government, his military leadership, and their entire command structure vanished from the homeworld and reappeared in orbit around Earth's moon. The same thing happened simultaneously across the Empire. Military commanders found themselves suddenly transported to human-controlled space. Government officials woke up in artificial habitats orbiting Jupiter. The entire Droo leadership structure simply disappeared from their own territory, Dr. Clark. Supervised the reception facilities that humanity had prepared for their unexpected guests. The Droo leaders were treated well, given comfortable quarters and proper care. But they were also completely cut off from their empire. "Where are we?" demanded Emperor Vaxulam when he regained consciousness. "We're guests of the human race," Clark replied politely. "You are safe and unharmed. Your people have also been relocated and are being cared for." "Human race?" The Emperor looked confused. "But humans are primitive. You have not even achieved interstellar travel." Clark smiled. "Your intelligence was somewhat outdated, Your Majesty." Back in Droo space, the Empire's remaining forces found themselves without leadership or direction. Colonies that had been ruled for centuries suddenly had no one giving them orders. Military units received no communications from their commanders. The vast bureaucracy that had held the Empire together for millennia simply stopped functioning. Engineer Mendez monitored the situation from Earth's command center. "Colonial governments are declaring independence," he reported. "Military units are abandoning their posts. The Empire is collapsing without central authority." Within a week, the Droo Empire ceased to exist as a political entity. Worlds that had been conquered centuries ago were suddenly free. Species that had been enslaved began governing themselves. The galaxy's largest military force had been neutralized without firing a shot. General Hayes reviewed the final reports with satisfaction. Total human casualties, 0. Droo casualties, 0. Military objectives, achieved. The Empire has been dismantled without unnecessary destruction or loss of life. Admiral Morrison addressed the relocated Droo leadership through a video communication link. "You ignored us because you thought we were primitive," he said. "You were wrong. We were different. And sometimes different is more dangerous than powerful." Emperor Vaxtulan stared at the human admiral with a mixture of fear and respect. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Morrison replied. "You and your people will be relocated to a suitable world where you can rebuild your civilization. But you will do so without the capacity to conquer others. Consider it a chance to start over." The galaxy buzzed with whispers about the species that had made an entire empire vanish overnight. Roots that had been controlled by the Droo for millennia were now open to all species. Worlds that had lived in fear of imperial conquest could now develop in peace and in the secret facilities. Beneath Earth's surface, humanity continued to watch and prepare. They had learned that the universe was full of powerful neighbors who might someday threaten their world. But they had also proven that power was not always about having the biggest weapons or the fastest ships. Sometimes the greatest strength came from being underestimated by those who thought they knew everything about warfare. The Droo Empire had learned this lesson too late. Other galactic powers took note and made sure never to ignore the small blue planet that had rewritten the rules of interstellar conflict. The first disappearance happened on a Tuesday. Fortress Calith, one of the Droo Empire's most important military bases, simply stopped responding to communications. The massive structure had been orbiting the third planet of the Zarian system for over 200 years. It housed 50,000 Droo soldiers and was considered impossible to attack. Communication. Officer Zelenara tried to reach the fortress for 3 hours before reporting the problem to her superiors. "No response from Calith base, sir. All communication channels are silent." Admiral Vextalon was in the middle of planning another attack on Zephyrian positions when the report reached him. He looked annoyed at the interruption. "Equipment failure," he said without looking up from his battle plans. "Send a repair ship to fix their communication array." The repair ship arrived at Zarian system 2 days later, Captain Morden expected. To find a routine technical problem, Steady found empty space where the fortress should have been. No debris field. Energy readings, No trace that anything had ever been there. "This is impossible," Morden reported back to Fleet Command. "There is nothing here. Nothing at all." Vextellan finally paid attention when the report reached his desk. A fortress with 50,000 inhabitants did not simply vanish. He ordered a full investigation and sent 3 scout ships to search the area around Zarian. The scouts found nothing. Space was completely empty where Fortress Calith had been. Their sensors detected no unusual energy signatures, no residual radiation, no signs of battle or explosion. It was as if the massive base had never existed. Equipment malfunction, Vextellan decided. The fortress suffered a critical system failure and was destroyed. File the incident and move on. But Dr. Quintel, the Empire's chief scientist, was not satisfied with that explanation. She studied the sensor data from the investigation and found something troubling. The space around Zarian was too clean. When something exploded in space, it left traces that lasted for years. This area showed no such traces. "Something removed the fortress," she told her assistant. "It did not explode. It was taken." Her assistant, a young Droo named Pelwan, looked confused. Taken by whom and how? Nothing in the galaxy has the power to move something that large. Quintel did not have an answer. But she began monitoring all military communications for similar incidents. She did not have to wait long. Outpost Meridian disappeared 6 days later. Then Mining Platform 7. Then the supply depot at Vega Prime. Each time, the same pattern. No warning, no distress signals. No evidence of what had happened. The disappearances started slowly, but they began to speed up. 2 installations vanished. In one day, then 3. Then an entire patrol fleet of 7 ships simply failed to report in. What the Droo did not know was that Captain Rodriguez and his ghost ships were responsible. The human vessels had perfected a technology that the Empire could not even imagine. They could open holes in space itself, creating tunnels between distant locations. Rodriguez watched through his ship's sensors as another Droo. Patrol approached their regular route. 3 heavy cruisers escorted by 4 destroyers. Standard formation, standard speed, completely predictable. "Target the lead cruiser," Rodriguez ordered his crew. "Initiate spacefold protocol." The human technology worked by bending space around a target. The Droo ship did not explode or break apart. Instead, space itself wrapped around the vessel and transported it somewhere else entirely. In this case, the destination was the core. Of Earth's sun, the remaining Droo ships continued their patrol route unaware that their companion had vanished. Their sensors showed nothing unusual. Their communication systems received no distress signals. One moment the lead cruiser was there, and the next moment it was not. "Target acquired and relocated," reported Lieutenant Foster from the sensor. "Station, no detection by remaining vessels." This was the beauty of the human approach. The Droo could not fight what they could not see. They could not defend against attacks they did not know were happening. By the time they realized something was wrong, their target was already gone. Engineer Mendez had perfected the space-folding technology over months of careful testing. The first experiments had used small asteroids, then derelict satellites. Finally, they had tested it on one of their own ships, successfully transporting it from Earth to Mars and back. "The key is to avoid their sensor grid entirely," Mendez explained to the strike team commanders. "Don't jam their sensors or hide from them. Operate in a way that their sensors cannot detect." Dr. Clark led similar missions throughout Droo territory. Her ships specialized in infiltrating enemy bases before they were transported. Small teams of humans would board Droo installations, disable any resistance, and then signal for the spacefold to begin. The infiltration teams used non-lethal weapons that knocked out Droo personnel without killing them. This served 2 purposes. First, it prevented the Droo from learning about human capabilities through interrogation of survivors. Second, it meant that when the installations reappeared in uninhabited star systems, the occupants would be alive, but stranded. "Boarding team reports successful infiltration of Research Station Delta," Clark reported during one mission. "Doll. Personnel neutralized. Ready for transport." Confirmed came the reply from the ghost ship Phantom. initiating spacefold in 30 seconds. The research station, along with its 3,000 sleeping inhabitants, vanished from Droo space and reappeared in orbit around a distant planet. The station's life support systems would keep everyone alive, but they would have no way to contact the Empire or return to civilization. General Hayes coordinated the overall campaign from Earth. She had divided Droo territory into sectors and assigned teams to each area. The goal was not to destroy the Empire's military might, but to make it disappear piece by piece. Psychological impact is more important than body count, Hayes explained to her staff. We want them confused and frightened. An enemy they cannot see or understand is more terrifying than one they can fight. The strategy was working. Panic began to spread through Droo command structures as reports of disappearances reached the highest levels of government. Fleet Admiral Vextalon found himself trying to explain the impossible to increasingly angry superiors. 43 installations have gone missing, reported his aide, Captain Kexmari. 17 patrol fleets, 6 major bases. The outer territories are in chaos. Find them, Vextalon shouted. Deploy every ship we have. Search every system. There must be evidence somewhere, but there was no evidence to find. The humans had learned to wage war without leaving traces. They struck without warning and vanished without a trail. The mighty Droo Empire, which had conquered dozens of civilizations, found itself fighting an enemy that did not exist on any of their sensors or battle plans. The disappearances continued to accelerate. The Droo Empire was bleeding ships and installations, but they had no idea who was attacking them or how to fight back. The crystal ship drifted through space like a frozen mountain. Its surface gleamed with purple light as it scanned the small solar system ahead. Inside the massive vessel, Commander Vextalon studied the readings on his screen. His large eyes moved across the data with boredom. Another backwater system, he said to his crew. The Droo Empire had been mapping this part of space for months. Found nothing but rocks and gas giants. Sometimes they found primitive life forms that barely knew how to use fire. The third planet from the yellow star caught his attention for a moment. It had water. It had an atmosphere. The scanners showed moving objects on the surface. Thailand zoomed in to get a better look. Bipedal creatures, he noted. They seemed to have basic technology. Nothing impressive. His science officer, a thin Droo named Kelron, leaned over to see the screen. Should we make contact, Commander? Vextalon laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. Why would we waste time on such primitive beings? Look at them. They still use chemical rockets to move around their own planet. They fight wars with metal projectiles. They're at least 1,000 years behind our weakest colony worlds. The scanner showed cities on the planet's surface. Roads connected them. Like thin lines, flying machines moved through the atmosphere, but they were crude and slow. Vextalon could see that these creatures had not even left their own solar system yet. File this system as Category 5, he ordered. Not worth our attention. Mark it for possible mining operations in a few centuries after the inhabitants go extinct. What Commander Vextalon did not know was that his ship had been detected the moment it entered Earth's solar system. Deep underground in a facility hidden beneath the mountains of Colorado, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the alien vessel on his own screens. Contact confirmed, Morrison said into his headset. Large ship, unknown configuration. Maintaining distance of approximately 2 million kilometers. Dr. Lisa Grant stood next to him, her fingers dancing over a control panel. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. While the world above went about its daily business, she and her team had been building humanity's defense against the unknown threats that lived among the stars. Their scanning patterns suggest they're mapping our entire system, Grant said, but they're not approaching Earth directly. They seem to be cataloging us like we're some kind of specimen. Captain Ben Rodriguez joined them at the main screen. His ship, the EDS Vengeance, was docked at the underground facility. Like the dozen other ships in humanity's secret fleet, it was invisible to conventional sensors. The technology that made this possible had taken decades to develop. Are they planning to attack? Rodriguez asked. Morrison shook his head. No attack posture. No weapons charged. They're treating us like we don't matter. The alien ship completed its scan and began to move away. Within hours, it had left Earth's solar system entirely. The three humans watched it disappear into the darkness between stars. They ignored us, Grant said quietly. Completely ignored us. That might be the best thing that could have happened, Morrison replied. It gives us time. For the next 3 days, the secret facility buzzed with activity. Scientists analyzed every piece of data they had gathered about the alien ship. Engineers worked around the clock to improve their stealth technology. Military strategists planned for a future that suddenly seemed much more dangerous. The ship belonged to something called the Droo Empire, according to the intercepted communications they had managed to decode. The Empire controlled dozens of star systems and hundreds of worlds. They were ancient, powerful, and completely convinced of their own superiority. Grant called a meeting of the senior staff. Around the table sat the best minds that humanity had to offer. Most of them had been working in secret for years, preparing for the day when Earth would meet its neighbors among the stars. The good news is that they don't see us as a threat, Grant began. The bad news is that they don't see us as anything. It all to them, we're just another primitive species that will probably destroy itself before we become interesting. How advanced are they? Asked Dr. Carlos Mendez, the chief engineer. Centuries ahead of us in most areas, Grant replied. Their ships are faster than anything we can build. Their weapons could destroy our cities from orbit. Their shields can stop anything we currently have. Then how do we fight them? Rodriguez wanted to know. Morrison stood up and walked to the large screen that dominated one wall of the room. It showed a map of known space, with red markers indicating Droo territory. We don't fight them, he said. Not directly. We do what humans have always done when faced with a stronger enemy. We adapt. Explain, Grant said. The Droo Empire has been successful for thousands of years, Morrison continued. They have standard tactics, standard technology, standard ways of thinking. They expect their enemies to fight like they do. Energy weapons against energy weapons, ship against ship, army against army. He turned back to face the group. But what if we don't fight like that? What if we do something they've never seen before? Dr. Susan Clark, who led the reconnaissance division, nodded slowly. You're talking about asymmetric warfare. Exactly. You can't match their firepower. So we don't try. We can't outrun their ships, so we don't run. Instead, we become something they can't understand, something they can't predict. Over the following weeks, the facility transformed into a hive of innovation. Engineers designed new types of weapons that worked on principles the Droo had never encountered. Scientists developed ways to hide entire fleets from enemy sensors. Strategists planned operations that seemed impossible even to the people who were designing them. The key breakthrough came from Mendez. While studying the Droo ship's energy signature, he discovered something remarkable. The aliens' technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also rigid. Their systems were designed to work perfectly within known parameters. They had no ability to adapt to truly alien approaches. It's like they've been playing the same game for so long. They've forgotten there might be other rules, Mendez explained to the group. Grant smiled for the first time in weeks. And let's teach them a new game. 3 months after the Droo ships visit, humanity was ready. Not ready to fight the Empire directly, but ready to do something much more effective. We were ready to become invisible. Ready to strike without warning. Ready to make the most powerful force in the galaxy wonder if they were losing their minds. The Droo Empire had made one critical mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare while assuming humans were too primitive to be dangerous. It was an assumption that would cost them everything. 3 months passed after the first Droo ship visited Earth's solar system. The aliens never returned to check on the small blue planet. They had bigger problems to worry about. The Zephyrian Confederacy was fighting back against Droo expansion. In the Outer Rim territories, warships clashed among distant stars while Earth remained forgotten. Commander Vextalon, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, led the 3rd Battle Group through human space without even slowing down. His massive fleet of crystal ships moved like a river of purple light, heading toward the Zephyrian front lines. Earth was just another star they passed on their way to more important battles. Sir, we are entering the primitive system again. His navigation officer reported. Vex Talon barely looked up from his tactical displays. Maintain course and speed. No need to waste time on scanning. Inhabitants are probably still throwing rocks at each other. The Droo fleet passed within. A few million kilometers of Earth, close enough that every human telescope could see them. Close enough that the secret defense facility in Colorado could study every detail of their ships and technology. Admiral Morrison watched the alien fleet through the underground facility's main viewer. 47 ships in perfect formation. Each one was kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could destroy a moon. The smallest escort vessel in the fleet carried more firepower than all of Earth's nuclear weapons combined. Count them again, Morrison ordered. 47 confirmed, reported Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the sensor station. 15 heavy cruisers, 20 destroyers, 10 support vessels, and 2 command ships. Dr. Grant joined Morrison at the main screen. She had been working without sleep for weeks, pushing her teams to develop new technologies. "This is our chance," she said quietly. "They're not paying attention to us. We can study them without them knowing." Captain Rodriguez was already suiting up for a reconnaissance mission. His ship, the EDS Vengeance, was one of 3 vessels that could shadow the Droo fleet without being detected. The stealth technology that made this possible was unlike anything else in the galaxy. "Permission to follow them, sir?" Rodriguez requested. Morrison nodded. "Take the Vengeance and the Phantom. Stay hidden. Learn everything you can about how they operate." The 2 human ships launched from the hidden facility and began following the Droo fleet. They stayed far behind, using advanced sensors to monitor alien communications and analyze ship movements. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The Droo were incredibly powerful, but they were also predictable. Their formations never changed. Their patrol patterns followed the same routes their ancestors had used for centuries. They communicated on frequencies that were easy to intercept and decode. They fight like they're still using thousand-year-old tactics, Rodriguez reported back to base. "Everything is done by the book. No improvisation, no creativity." Engineer Carlos Mendez spent days analyzing the data from the reconnaissance mission. He focused on the energy signatures of Droo weapons and shields. What he found changed everything humanity thought they knew about galactic warfare. "Their technology is incredibly advanced," Mendez explained to the assembled team. "But it's also incredibly specialized. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons. Their sensors look for metal holes and engine signatures. Their tactics assume the enemy will fight ship to ship in open space." "What does that mean for us?" asked Dr. Clark. "Means they're prepared for everything except what we're planning to do," Mendez replied with a grin, while Rodriguez shadowed the Droo fleet. Their human teams began implementing the plans they had developed. Dr. Clark led a group of specialists in building what they called ghost ships. These vessels used technology that was completely outside normal galactic engineering principles. Instead of metal holes, they were made from materials that absorbed sensor waves. Instead of traditional engines, they used propulsion systems that left no detectable signature instead of energy weapons. They carried devices that could manipulate space itself. The ghost ships were small compared to Droo vessels. Each one carried only a crew of 12, but they could do things that the massive alien warships could never imagine. Meanwhile, the secret facility expanded its operations. New underground bases were constructed on the Moon and Mars, asteroid. Mining operations began harvesting materials for the growing human fleet. All of this happened while the surface world continued its normal daily life. Unaware that humanity was preparing for an interstellar war, General Patricia Hayes joined the project to oversee military strategy. She had spent her career studying historical conflicts where smaller forces defeated larger ones. Her expertise in guerrilla warfare and unconventional tactics became crucial to the developing plan. "The key is to never fight them where they expect," Hayes explained to her staff. "We don't attack their strongest points. We don't engage their main fleets. Instead, we make them wonder what's happening to them." The Droo fleet that had passed through the solar system was now deep in Zephyrian space, fighting conventional battles against conventional enemies. Their war followed predictable patterns. Fleets met in open space. Weapons charged and fired. Ships were destroyed or captured, according to the ancient rules of galactic warfare. What the Droo didn't know was that Rodriguez and his team were still following them. The human ships had been observing Droo military operations for weeks, learning their procedures and identifying their weaknesses. They always send the same patrol patterns, Rodriguez reported. Supply convoys follow fixed routes. Communication relays are unguarded because they've never been attacked. Their entire military structure depends on routine, added his censor. Officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster. They do the same things, the same way, every time. Back on Earth, Dr. Grant was putting the finishing touches on humanity's secret weapon. It wasn't a gun or a bomb or a new type of ship. It was something much more dangerous to an empire that had forgotten how to adapt. We're going to teach them that the universe is bigger than they think, Grant told Morrison, and more dangerous than they can imagine. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Humanity would not attack the Droo Empire directly. Instead, they would make the Empire's assets disappear. Ships, bases, installations, entire fleets would simply vanish without a trace. No battles, no destruction, no evidence of what had happened. The Droo would wake up one day to find that parts of their mighty empire had just stopped existing. And when they tried to investigate, they would find nothing but empty space where their property used to be. It was psychological warfare on a scale that the galaxy had never seen, and it was about to begin.